One, we are recording on Wednesday, July 9th, 2025 at 2:02 p.m. Eastern Time. It has nothing to do with what we're talking about, but Wednesday is the 80-year anniversary of the first A-bomb test. Not that that has literally anything we're talking about. Not We weren't even talking about that before this. This is just a thought that came out of my head. Um, but so I didn't know, and for everybody listening, Mike Shelby, Joe Dolio, both of you guys have been on here before. You guys can go to the description. You can find their websites, their Twitters, all that good stuff. Please go follow them. Please go support them. Buy the books. Buy the Intel thing. Please go do that. Please support these guys. They come on my show. They don't get anything from me because I don't have anything. But I didn't know about it until Joe tweeted about it. Well, somebody sent me Mike's thread last night. They're like, this thread's awesome, and pulled it up, and it's got like 2.5, 3 million impressions already. So aside from just immediate burning jealousy that my own show doesn't work that well, I was very happy. And then I saw Joe tweet, I think the day before, and you're like, this is why you've heard nothing about this like ambush. I was like, what the fuck is he talking about? And I went into the thread, and everyone was like, what are you talking about? I had no idea that that happened. But to just Mike, could you or whoever wants to take it first? What exactly, and why is it more significant than just your random run of the mill, blue hair, throw a brick through the window? And imagine it's the coordination. Could you touch on that, Mike?
Yeah, I think there's really two reasons why this did not get media coverage. Well, listen, it got some media coverage. I was on CNN's website yesterday. They still hadn't written anything about it. But one of the reasons is because something geographically much larger happened in Texas, which was the flooding of the Guadalupe River and San Antonio and Austin. So I think, and it was just wall to wall coverage all weekend of that. So plus this ambush took place on 4th of July at 11 p.m. So, kind of a lull of the next day, kind of a lull in the news cycle anyway. Just people taking the Independence Day weekend. And then the other reason, it's just extremely inconvenient for this whole narrative that, oh, the right is the only people who pose a threat in this country. So the reason why this is more significant than literally anything else that I have seen since the 2020 riots, insurrection, I think attempted popular revolution, it also, I think, dwarfs the bombings of the pro-life clinics that we saw from Jane's Revenge in 2021, 22, somewhere around there. Because you had at least 10 Antifas, 10 Antifa militants at this thing, plus an 11th co-conspirator who was not there. And they ambushed 3 to 4 police officers, 2 unarmed correctional officers who came out. Well, I guess let me set up the scene here. So at around 10:30 on Friday night, on July 4th, you have 10 to 12 Antifa militants start shooting fireworks towards the Prairie Land Detention Center in Alvarado, Texas, which is right outside Fort Worth. And it looked like, and according to the DA, the district attorney, it was an attempt to draw law enforcement out of this building so that multiple gun persons, could then begin shooting and killing law enforcement. And they did that. 2 unarmed correctional officers came out. This is an ICE facility. They came out to approach the people who were shooting fireworks. About 1 minute later, Alvarado Police Department showed up with at least one vehicle. I would imagine 1 to 2 officers got out of that vehicle. And that's when you have 2 shooters open fire from 100 to 150 meters away to the west. And they struck 1 police officer in the neck. I think it was Alvarado PD officer. And that's it. And then one of their guns jammed. They're both firing AR rifles, AR-15s. One jams, and then they ditch the rifles at some point in time in the wood line, and they take off to the west. So generally, that's what happened. And that's kind of the reason why it's so important, is because I would classify this as a complex ambush. This was not just hey, we're going to wait here in the woods for someone to show up. We're going to shoot fireworks. We're going to draw first responders out, and then we're going to ambush them. And that's something unprecedented. I know we went through the 60s and 70s, and there was a lot of violence and bombings and shooting and stuff. Completely not lost on me. I'm extremely aware of that. But in the past 10 years of almost 10 years of me covering Antifa and the far left revolutionaries, this absolutely is unprecedented.
Joe,
I
you want to
think
take it from there?
a significant piece of that was the use of advanced communication devices. They use radios, most likely, the same one we see them use everywhere, some type of a Baofeng radio. But I saw them in Denver a few weeks ago using the DM 1701, which is a digital radio, therefore harder to intercept, a little bit better range, and a little bit more action. They have a YouTube channel that they all follow called Black Flag Civilian, where he is teaching them to use the digital Baofeng radios to encrypt their traffic. That signifies a level of organization, just like Mike said, that is far beyond the average guy showing up at a protest on Saturday. These people coordinated this over a longer period of time, made a very complex plan, just as Mike pointed out. They should have maybe spent a little more time on their E&E plan afterward. But this is beyond protest. This is actual insurgent activity. And if it gets legs and continues to grow, we could have a real problem. I'm not saying that's going to happen. Mike's got a better eye on that than I do. But I am saying that on the right and everywhere in America, no matter what your political spectrum is, you actually need to be aware of that fact that they went to this level. And if they're willing to do that against armed and prepared law enforcement officers, what's your risk level?
It it makes me think of the Oreshnik ballistic missile last fall, and everyone's like, yeah, it had no warheads, it had, but the fact that it was that they used that in war had never been done before. That itself was significant. It doesn't matter if they just hit a random building instead of a nuke. It's the fact that it's the same reason why Sputnik was significant. It's not that it's beeping, it's that they put a weighted object in orbit in the 50s. That's, well, what else is weighted? Nuclear weapon, blah, blah, blah. So that itself is significant that they did it. I guess the next natural question, and just for everyone that, is might be surprised by because I'm an idiot. I have no military background. I have a biology degree, so please excuse my questions, but does that not then signify, are these people the ones who put this together? Or are they true believers who were taught or paid or whatever to do this? Mike?
I would say almost certainly they're autonomous. That was one of the questions that I got on that Twitter thread. Is there some level of command? Is there some level of command and control or HQ or some higher level authority? And typically what you find in these Antifa cells is absolutely not. They eschew all forms of hierarchy. They have a consensus driven decision making process, which is extremely messy. But there is not a commander like in the traditional sense that you would see. Oh, this is a squad leader, this is a platoon leader, company, whatever. And so I highly doubt that anyone urged them to do this. Now, directly. Apparently, according to the indictment, some of these people met online, and they met on Reddit or Discord or Blue Sky or Mastodon or wherever they are. And so I think that's very important. But B, there could have in these channels there could have been something like some level of kind of agreement that, hey, we need to go do something against ICE. Okay, well, great, let's go together. And then one of these guys goes out and buys an AR-15 rifle 10 days prior to this event. And so just looking at the planning, how well was this planned? I think extremely basic planning was conducted. I don't look at this. It was a complex attack, and it was kind of two phases, but I don't think it was a well-designed or obviously not well-developed plan. Also, I have to go back and count specifically, but law enforcement probably recovered at least 5 or 6 AR-15 rifles, if I'm for sure at least 4, and maybe up to 5 or 6. So, and that's in addition to multiple pistols. So several of these suspects were arrested with pistols in their belt or in a holster or whatever they had. So it looks like to me that some of them probably chickened out. So this attack could actually have been much worse. It actually could have had probably the catastrophic effect that some of these people wanted, to go out and kill the Nazis and kill the ICE agents, but it didn't. And so while I do think technically this is an operational leap for Antifa just compared to what we've seen since 2015. Uh, I, their operational capability is still extremely low.
But this the significance is yeah, no, I mean all things considered, yeah, if I show this to Dale would be like, what is this? But in terms of in relativity to what had been happening, it is a notable jump up. It's by no means is it Delta, but it's a jump up in comparison to what had been going on, which itself is a notable barometer.
It's aspirational. Yeah.
Yeah, Joe.
Um, I think it's significant, just like Mike said, that many weapons were picked up. It's also obvious from their hit rate that they didn't do a lot of marksmanship training. They didn't do a lot of pre-deployment training together to make this what it could have been. I think too that something we learn in training when we do force on force training with civilians is that it's one thing to talk tough online. It's another to look through your sights and see a living, breathing human being there that calls somebody else mom, just like you do. So I think that Mike's right. There were a bunch of people who were way tougher than that until they got out there and they lifted a rifle and were like, "Hey, you know what? This is actually a step I'm not willing to make," and they might have chickened out. But as Mike points out too, that this is the beginning, right? Somebody else is now going to step up and say, these guys did that, so maybe it's my turn. And we may have seen that with the next attack that happened with the young man outside of the Bortak base there, outside of their operations center, who ambushed them a couple days later, 2 days after this one. So I think that we got lucky here in that these guys were not well trained. They weren't actually organized. They didn't know each other long enough to actually operate as a team. That's one of the things a lot of these groups miss is that in order to actually coalesce into a combat effective team, you have to spend time together. You have to know what each other is thinking, how they're going to move, and how things happen. You can't just slap a group together and go do something. So again, we may have lucked out there. This could have been way worse than it was. But I think it is a big sign. Mike, you said this at the beginning of the election cycle that we're probably not going to see as many protesters as we once did, but the ones we see will be more violent. And I think this is just proof that you are spot on in that assessment.
Well, I appreciate that. And yeah, I think there's a level of when your size is reduced, I think there's just a natural tendency to say, well, we have to do more to keep the pressure up, which is going to naturally lead to more violence. Plus, there's this whole thing, and they're right, protests don't work for the intended effect that they want. And so it is a period. I hesitate to say this is a new period of escalation. There's going to continue to be armed violence against ICE. There will be more shootings, 100%. I would be surprised if they continue to choose hard targets like this in the size that this Alvarado ambush was. But in onesies and twosies, three, maybe an extremely small team like that, 100%, I think there's a 100% chance that this will happen again. But they're going to attack softer targets more than likely instead of hard targets like an actual federal facility. And it's difficult. If you go out there and you don't know what you're doing, it's really difficult to disperse 10 people. I think they arrived in one vehicle. There was a van, and my understanding just from reading through the indictment, they all piled in a single van. So there was just a lot of operational failures here.
How come we haven't? So I get at face value, like why we haven't heard about it. Obviously, the media being biased as it is, that's no surprise. I think what surprised me the most, though, when I originally saw Joe's tweet was, where's the White House on this? That's kind of the whole thing, right? It's like he doesn't really right now. It seemingly doesn't matter what the leftist media thinks because it's like Trump's just a bull in a china shop. Where's that like classic like incendiary tweet or soundbite? These two countries have been fighting for so long and for so hard they don't know what the fuck they're doing. Where's the bite about the radical left and that's to me I don't even know what that implies, but that seems odd to me. I totally expect the media to drop it if not outright cover it up. That's par for the course. Where's the White House on this? Where's anyone on this?
I think that in this one case, which is odd, Donald Trump's gotten some good advice and he's taken it because anything Donald Trump says about this is only going to inflame things further. It might be better for him to let
Yeah,
someone like Nome or whoever address that rather than him himself, because he is a lightning rod. He does tend to create a little bit of
fair,
animosity whenever he speaks.
fair.
I would think this runs into an officer safety issue. I mean, if you're a member of ICE, do you really want the president agitating and egging on more violence or egging on more violence? And I would say that would probably be the natural consequence of this. So President Trump is also tied up in these tariff trade deals. I agree. We do kind of see these bull in a China shop type of social media posts from him. In short, I don't know. But if I were an ICE agent, I definitely would not want the president
Sure.
uh, effectively encouraging more armed violence.
Yeah, there's something to be said for I think it was in his first term. Stephen Colbert said something about him and Trump responded. And everyone in like the kind of entertainment sphere was like, you already lost when you responded. You're not supposed to even give them the time of day. Like it has taken a lot of bands' Twitter accounts and on my own Rumble channel to realize like, hey, the most effective counter forces just don't even acknowledge the comment. They want that. And that itself is almost a form of loosely, but sort of the wall-to-wall coverage of, school shooters. I can't name all 50 states, but I can tell you it was Eric Harris and Dylan Klebold or Dylan who shot Columbine on April 20th, 1999. Like, well, why do I know that? And it's very clear that, those stick in our minds. And in that psychotic state, that is kind of the only thing they're getting is their moment of fame. And I mean, loosely, I could say maybe they're trying to prevent that feedback loop of, well, you got the president to comment. I
Mm.
I don't know. Your thoughts, Mike?
Yeah, one other thing too. This is still an active investigation. FBI surveillance out of the Dallas or Fort Worth field office, whichever one they're in. They were conducting surveillance against some of these suspects. They've got cell phones, they've got all sorts of stuff, and laptops and whatever else they collected from these search warrants from these homes. And so I'm sure this. I can only hope that this network is being built out. And again, I'm not saying that this is why. I have no idea why Trump hasn't tweeted about this. But one benefit is it may disrupt the investigation. It may cause more people to clam up when they think there's a larger spotlight on them. And so I would love to see these interview or interrogation reports from these 10 guys. I think these networks have needed to be taken down, obviously, for going on 10 years now. Dallas is it's not obviously not a Portland. It's not an Austin either, but there is a sizable Antifa militant presence in the greater Dallas-Fort Worth area. I would be surprised if we probably don't see more arrests come, frankly.
Joe.
I know that at least one of the people arrested was a DACA recipient, so I don't know if that's going to come into play in all of this. But these people had friends who also have friends, and there's a network that's out there. It's not organized in the sense of we normally think of as an organization, right? It's people who know each other and they share thoughts and ideas. Like Mike pointed out earlier, there's no commander, but now there are some people who are sympathetic to these 10 who are now have some sort of an aggrieved status because my friend got arrested by the Nazis. And when you take 10 people and you expand those friend networks out into so many circles, it's like dropping a pebble in a pond, right? You've created this big ripple. Among that ripple, there's going to be some sort of a bad actor that's intent on doing this. And I agree with Mike when he says we're going to see more of these shootings, but they're not going to be hard targets. It's very tough to hit a defended facility that's meant to be defended. However, it's pretty easy to hit 2 ICE guys sitting in their surveillance vehicle, waiting for an alien that they're looking for to come out. somebody might have a family member that they know is on a deportation list. So they might start doing counter surveillance. And then we might see some street action in that regard. And it becomes pretty hard for a DHS or Border Patrol agent to do his job. They start to get in a defensive mindset. They start getting a little more apt to defend themselves quickly. And then you see spiraling violence on both sides, and somebody then accidentally gets killed in the middle. That's kind of the worst case scenario, but I could totally envision it happening because we've seen this before in different areas where we've had conflict, not necessarily in the US, but it's happened all over. Two sides have a conflict. Kosovo is one of the first one that comes to mind. There's two legitimate sides that have a conflict, and then one of those two sides kills an innocent and blames the other side, and all of a sudden you have a mass riot and mass civil disobedience over something that was an accident. So I think that the risk for escalation is there, but it's not going to be. Everyone has this dream of what a civil war in America would look like. It's not going to look like any of that. It's going to look like insurgent activity on both sides going at each other, with the police largely sitting on the sidelines. And that's my concern, is that these Antifa folks are going to hit someone other than an ICE agent, and some other group is going to take exception to that, and then they're going to hit an Antifa person, and that's going to go back and forth. And the police essentially withdraw because they're like, "Hey, man, I'm not in the military. I don't get paid enough to do this. I'm out." And my friend Don Shift, who's a former police officer himself, just pointed that out. That unlike the military, you can't force cops to do things; they'll just quit, and that raises a bigger risk than some sort of tit for tat between the DHS and Antifa.
The United States doesn't exist in a vacuum, and if I was an external force, this is something that I would look at and call a win-win. To get them to go back and you and I look at it and go, this is where I live, and I don't want that. It's going to spiral out of control. If I'm
Right.
outside of the U.S., I'm going, yeah, spiral is good. Spiral. That's what I would do. I mean, is that not the next logical step?
Mike, I'll let you answer that one.
I
You
think
keep it
most
on.
Antifas are chicken shit, frankly. There's a reason why they don't engage in armed violence, because they're not very good at it. Number one, there's relatively far fewer of them than there are literally anybody else just across the country. So will we see a onesie or twosie conduct armed attacks? Yeah, it's 100%. I think we will. But there's a reason why the left is trying to keep a conflict beneath the threshold of armed violence. And I know there has been armed violence, and I'm not saying obviously that's going to continue, but by and large, you look at your hardcore Antifas in Portland and Seattle, they're they're not out there shooting at. Now sometimes they do, but they're out there throwing bricks and stuff, and they're not engaging in armed violence. And the reason why they want to do that is because uh, they're not very good at war fighting, frankly. But they are very good at this kind of insurrectionary violence. And so obviously that's going to continue. But the broader point is, uh, if you just, I mean, look at most of these individual shootings. Most of these individual shootings that are not gang related happen for two reasons. Number one, because someone is mentally deranged, or two, someone has an extreme personal grievance and they have nothing left to lose. And I look at that and I say, well, of course, some of these Antifas are mentally deranged, but probably not to the point that they're going to go on some shooting rampage. And they do have a personal grievance, but at least for now, shooting is not just going to be the standard MO for Antifa. It's going to remain beneath the threshold of armed violence.
Lastly, to we can kind of wrap it up is unless there's more to go on. What do you what so predicting is the tit for tat spiral, the continuing probably onesie twosie. It might be they probably want to stay below the threshold because they know they can't win in that. Or and then there's just the whole do you have the balls to pull the trigger? Probably not. What is the expected or predicted response from the administration, the state? Not the whole not the Trump statement, but rather what realistically happens. Like, I mean, do they start just, does ICE start, is it some kind of minor? Like, hey, ICE gets MRAPs now. Or is it, ICE is now going in with, full on protection details around them? Not that either of you have the crystal ball, but Mike, you've been pretty good at predicting things thus far. So let's say it continues. Let's say it doesn't go up. Let's say it just plateaus like this. A couple attacks here and there, blocking roads, and then, whatever, fireworks and shooting and haphazard, sloppy Sputniks, but nonetheless Sputniks. What realistically happens from the state side?
Well, I would like to see it maintained within the Department of Justice. Felonies work. We go back to that 2023 Georgia RICO case. They the Stop Cop City thing. They were going out and burning vehicles and setting pipe bombs and occupying this construction site where they're trying to build the Atlanta Public Training Safety Center, which is a police training place. They called it Cop City, and this was like a multi-year thing. And then finally, one day, the state of Georgia just says, well, we're just going to go arrest them all. And they arrested 61 people and they slapped them with RICO charges, with conspiracy to commit all sorts of crimes. And they're going through those trials now, but it worked. The Stop Cop City movement, they deleted their website. They basically didn't have any manpower to go out and do these occupations. And I think we've continued to see arsons as a result of that. But, that's pretty standard Antifa MO. But felonies work. That had a huge chilling effect on that movement. And I think, these 10 or 11 people now being also facing federal felonies, I think that's going to work. I was just looking through some of the Antifa social media and just trying to gauge metrics. And I didn't see any of them angry. It's not like they said, oh, those bastards are going to pay. We're going to go out and get them. They're kind of like, holy shit, I can't actually believe this happened.
Mm.
And so that leads me to believe that we're not going to see any like squad style armed violence or ambushes or raids. Probably not anytime soon. Onesies and twosies almost certainly will continue to happen. But I think the risk level is a lot higher. They don't have the political top cover that they had. They're not just being caught and released like they have been, especially in 2020. They are facing charges. They are facing prison sentences. So I actually think there's a pretty strong argument that we will not see any kind of Antifa backlash. And that's going to allow the Trump administration to keep this in the judicial system, keep arresting people when they do commit crimes, charge them with maximum whatever charges or penalties or whatever they have. And RICO. You got to go in and arrest them all for conspiracy. And one of the things that we saw from the Biden administration is the process is the punishment. They don't care that you didn't do anything wrong. The Biden administration didn't. That DOJ didn't care that you did anything wrong. But the process was the punishment.
Yep.
And I'm not saying the Trump DOJ needs to do that, but they've got to go in places where crimes are actually being committed and conspiracy is actually being committed and do that to the maximum effect. That's what I would like to see. That's what I expect to see.
That's probably it's an abstract parallel analogy to Curtis LeMay, right? Secretary of the Air Force under Kennedy. If you're going to use violence or if you're going to kill people in war, use excessive violence, kill excessive people, civilians and soldiers, because in the end, you will not only save your lives, but you will save the other side's lives as well. It's ultimately the humane thing to do. Now, to water it down as well as legally, not to sound like I'm calling for violence. In a legal sense, it seems like that's probably the most humane thing to do if we're looking at what Joe said and go, well, if it doesn't get dealt with, and then it starts spiraling back and forth, both sides are going to have a lot of human loss. And so it seems like the most humane thing to do would be to just RICO it, felony it, and try to chill it now before it spirals into what it could be. Again, not that I have any wisdom in any of this shit.
I was pretty happy to see a rapid FBI response, which is what was needed, just like Mike said. It's one thing to be arrested by the local cops. It's another to be arrested by the FBI, right? And be facing a federal felony where they're going to move you halfway across the country, and they're going to be there. So I think that's right. I think that the quick law enforcement response was there. But don't get me wrong. When I say the spiraling thing, that's not going to be large scale organized. It's going to be the onesie twosie things that Mike talks about.
Yeah.
You killed my cousin, so I'm going to kill yours. Kind of a Hatfields and McCoy thing.
Yeah.
Right. And I think that we're going to see some of that. But Mike's right. They were shocked that a federal law enforcement agency took rapid and decisive action against them and nipped it in the bud. I just wish I could get them to do that about certain other issues that we face in life, like, the Epstein client list. But that's another story for another day.
Like that
On
one.
the Antifa front of it, uh, yeah, I think that Mike's 100% right. Most of them are really shocked in the response that happened because it's never happened before. And I wanted to remind everyone that when Mike brought up Stop Cop City, that also involved an officer involved shooting where one of their people died to get them to that point. And that's when the state of Georgia was like, we're done with this. We're not going to face this anymore. And you'll still see the left treat Tortuga, or whatever his name was. I guess that was his street name, as some sort of a martyr. And I think that the hero worship we see on the left of Luigi Mangione is going to come to play. And we're not going to see the squad size attack like we saw there, but we're going to see more like Mosqueda, this young kid who opened fire on an ICE facility himself and managed to hit one officer in the knee. And I think we had one Border Patrol person cut by flying glass before he got sorted out. But it'll be more of the onesie twosie attacks that are way harder to predict because that guy's not talking to anyone, right? He's just making up a plan and making something happen. That's what we have to worry about.
Um, and yeah, we'll kind of wrap it up. But Mike, do you have any advice on what stocks we should buy? As you have kind of hit this out of the park with you were saying, I remember seeing your tweets last fall. You're like, there's not the same energy, there's not the same stamina that we saw in 2020, and you're kind of seeing it. And like, but the things that do last, or the things that do still persist, will be, spiking up to, like you said, maintain the pressure. So not financial advice, but Mike is now going to tell us how we should all boost our portfolio. So I'll hand it over to you, Mike.
Yeah.
One thing that I see frequently on Antifa blogs is they say this is a completely different security environment, and I think it has had kind of a depressing effect on them. And so, yeah, I don't have any stock tips for you, unfortunately. I may accept Palantir. I don't know. Palantir and gold. I just go long those. Pretty much every government on earth is going to have eventually their own Palantir or their own contracts with Palantir.
Yeah.
I don't provide financial advice either, but
Yeah, no, and legally, I don't. I was going to say no. The IDF's what was it, Violet or whatever or I think it was Violet, whatever their program for targeting. That was a subsystem of Palantir. It came out like a year later. It was all Palantir doing it. They're like, oh,
Mhm.
Israel has a Palantir. It's like, no, it's literally Palantir. So yeah, I don't know. But
you know what there needs to be? There needs to be a Project Veritas, but for Antifa, because there are a lot of veterans who
yeah,
come from special missions units or come from SOF or come from that kind of world, and they would love to bite off this mission. And I think an important mission. And I will just tell you, it's not difficult. Like literally, probably anybody with just basic surveillance skills can go out and start photographing who these people are, because it's the same damn people going to the same spots. And they, when they go to these riots or they go to these direct action demonstrations, they leave. They go back home somewhere. And so, I think identifying them would probably not be that difficult if you had the means and some backing. Number one. So, Eric Prince, if you're listening or watching this podcast, hit me up. And then number two, realistically, we're dealing with like maybe in the low thousands of like just hardcore Antifas across the country. That is just not a big problem. It is not a high priority because as things go, riots are just no DA wants to get someone on obstruction or whatever. But it's not a big problem. It can be done very quietly, and I think that's the way the Trump DOJ should pursue it.
amen. Joe, any closing thoughts? And Joe is releasing a calendar where he dresses up as a fireman. I don't want to spoil it, but I know he is releasing his. It's a little late this year, 30 July, but it's going to be great. It's 12 by 10 glossy. You can get it at tacticalwisdom.com. It's very little is left to the imagination. I'll say that.
if there's one thing you should have learned over the last few years, it is do not listen to Tommy when he talks about me. Uh, Anywho, but I did ride on a fire truck on the 4th of July though, so that was
That's another, see, in every lie, there's a little bit of truth. For everybody listening, please go in the description. Please go follow these guys on Twitter. I'm going to text you guys after this. There's another show that I think might be interested in having either or both of you on. Um, and yeah, go and please support them. Please go follow them. Please go do all that good shit. And gentlemen, thank you both for time out of your day. I genuinely appreciate it.
absolutely.
All right,
Joe,
guys.
good to see you again. Tommy,
Yes,
have a
sir.
good
Yes,
day.
sir. See ya.
All right, guys. God bless everybody.